What's up, gorgeous? I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to another episode of the Fierce Framework, where we talk about becoming fierce through messy action, baby steps, and cultivating your confidence. I'm your host, Mary Beth. I'm an ADHD kid with a dream to see more women living lives that we're excited about. I want to see us breaking out of the mold society tells us we're supposed to fit into and start living life more on our own terms, where we're in line with our values, we're pursuing our purpose, and we're making our dreams turn into realities. What's up, gorgeous? I'm so glad you're here. It has been forever since I've recorded an episode. I worked ahead for when I was going to be gone in Mexico, and now I'm back and back to the grind, right? So I feel like it's been a minute and I'm excited to jump back into it. We've been talking a lot about taking action, right? And kind of what that looks like and how it works, and going from focus and finding your focus and kind of planning and strategizing into initiate and taking action, and talking about like having a bird's eye view and then coming down and taking like little baby steps. And so I just want to kind of continue with that kind of journey today and talking about how clarity follows action. Because so often I think we hesitate to take action because we want to figure out what the right action is. And this again is one of those things that where there's a balance, right? So not all action is good action. You don't want to be running around it's like a chicken with your head cut off and um kind of zigzagging everywhere and just trying things and then quitting and trying something else and quitting with like no thought whatsoever. Like that's probably not going to be your most strategic modus operandum. But but I think so often we go so far to the other side where it's like we don't want to take any action until we have the full journey planned out and we know like exactly what every step is going to look like, and we want like an entire roadmap all the way to the final destination, that end goal, before we're willing to take one step to even start that journey. And so that's kind of the perspective that I want to speak to today, especially with those of us who might struggle with like perfectionism or just like struggling to take action, whether it's analysis paralysis or um, worrying about failure or like what could go wrong, or not being comfortable allowing ourselves to make mistakes or to change our minds. Like there's so many things that keep us stuck to where we're too afraid to like even start, right? And so that kind of mindset is what I want to speak to today. Um, yeah, if you have no problem taking action and you're doing all the things all the time, then you might not get the most out of this episode, and that's okay. So so let's dive in. One of the biggest things I think that comes up is like you're not sure what the right thing is, right? So I know that that was my struggle for a long time. Is I knew that I wanted to start a business and I knew I wanted to do something for myself, and I wasn't sure what I wanted that to be. And so I kept doing nothing and tried to figure it out in my head, as we do, right? And turns out you can only think yourself so far into the unknown. So I think it's a little bit different, like if you have experience and you have like more knowledge and familiarity with situations, right? Because then you have a better, you're planning out in your mind of what's probably going to happen is a little more accurate. It's based in reality and experience, right? But when you're starting something new, and you're where you're at and you want to do something new to get to an end result, right? So whether that is starting a business or becoming an author or whatever that is, like you don't necessarily know what every step along the way is going to look like, and that's okay. You don't have to figure it all out before you start. So I got hung up on like what is the right thing? Like what is the ultimate perfect business? And who knows? Who knows, right? And we talk about this like in other episodes, so I'm not going to get like too far into that. But like there's only so much that you can figure out before you start getting into it. So I made the most progress because I was just spinning my wheels, like trying to figure everything out, where to start until I started taking action, right? So I put thought into it of what did I think was going to work? What kind of things do I like? What am I good at, right? And so I started with travel blogging. I was like, love traveling, pretty good at writing, don't hate it. So let's start there. And then once I got into that, I was like, okay, I like the social media aspect of it, and I definitely like traveling, and I like talking about traveling, but I'm not really digging the like I'm a travel blogger like vibe, and it wasn't. So then I pivoted away from it, right? But I learned so much during that time, and there's still aspects of that that I kept, right? Like I'm saying I just got back from a trip to Mexico, and I'm probably going to talk about it. I haven't really processed it yet, so stay tuned. But I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to write about it. You'll see it worked into my content. You'll see me share, once I kind of process through and like figure out what lessons I did learn, absolutely share those things. So there's a lot that I learned from that travel blogging era that are still part of what I do today. And I don't even know that this is its final form, right? Like, who's to say I'm going to be a coach forever? Like, probably not. And even coaching evolves, right? You work with individuals, you do group coaching, you do courses, like different people do different things. And so you don't have to figure everything out and like pigeonhole yourself and stick with that one thing. But taking action will help us gain that clarity. So you don't have to be so caught up in, I think this is like what I'm trying to get to, right? The ultimate encouragement is like you don't have to be so stuck in figuring out the exact perfect thing before you take action. Get a vibe, right? So like if you want to be an influencer, right? You're probably going to be on social media. So that narrows it down. If you're probably not blogging, you're probably not working in construction if you're an influencer. I don't know, I'm just pulling stuff out of the air. Um, but so you want enough of a vibe to start because if you want to be a dancer, right, like going and finding a job at McDonald's is like maybe not the greatest first step. But if you know you want to be in the performing arts, then that gives you a place to start. And you're applying for school or you're joining a group or you're taking a class or whatever that is. And then you might start out thinking that you want to be a ballerina and then you pivot to hip hop dancing. But how would you know unless you get into that field and you get into that world and you start taking classes or you start, learning how to dance or being around other dancers. Because also we talk about this in other episodes too, but like once you get into a world, you start seeing how many opportunities are within that world that you might not have known even existed before you got into it. So it's so important to start taking action and start trying things because that is going to be one of the quickest, most effective ways to learn what it is that it really lights you up. So I want to encourage us, like when you're feeling stuck and you have to figure everything out before going and doing something, figure it out enough to know what the first step might be, and then go ahead and take that first step, right? So if you want to solo travel, right, you don't have to have your first trip be the ultimate European summer where everything's perfect and then you're gonna write a book about it and like that's gonna be your whole future is like this one perfect Euro trip. It doesn't have to be the way that you start. If you want to solo travel, you can start by being solo. If you're not comfortable having dinner alone, start going to dinner alone, start going to movies alone, right? So these things are along the same lines, but they don't have to be perfect and like part of that ultimate goal. You can start with something more general or in one direction and then pivot as you go. So once you have an idea of what you want to do, I want to encourage you to take action as early as possible because you're going to get so much crucial feedback that way. So like I started taking solo road trips to states that I'd already been to, like California. I'd been there with family and then I just went there by myself. And it's like, okay, I already know I like the place. I know it's safe. I don't have to worry about that. And then I can kind of focus on how does it feel to travel alone? Because maybe I hate it, maybe it's overwhelming or scary or like maybe it's not actually something I want to do. Now, there's going to be scary parts and hard parts with everything, right? But there's a difference between like, oh, I actually have no interest in this versus like, oh, this is a challenge, but it's still part of something I love. And I'm going to overcome this challenge and I'm going to do it anyway because I still want to get to this end goal, right? And so, but when you do something smaller, then you can kind of allow yourself to get acclimated and it's easier because you're not like overwhelmed and traumatized, right? You're like, when you're easing into something, it's easier, at least for me, right, to be more present and figure out like, okay, what's working? What isn't working? Do I like this? So I want to encourage you when you want to do something strikes your fancy, whatever you think that like this is part of where you want to head, like where you want to be kind of aiming for in life or in your next goal. Sorry, my hair is bothering me. I want to encourage you to go ahead and take what is the first step you could take? What is a baby step? Maybe that's joining a networking group or reading a book on the topic or going to an event or doing a small version of the thing, right? Like if you want to start painting, you can join a class or even go to a paint and sip, right? Like it doesn't have to be a huge high pressure end goal moment. It can be an experiment. Let's try this out. Let's see if this is fun. Let's give it a shot. Let's see how I feel when I do this. And like taking the pressure off, your first step doesn't have to be like a life-changing ultimate goal type thing. It can be just an experiment. And honestly, that's probably a whole separate issue, but like I think we need to experiment a lot more because it kind of takes so much of the weight off and you're like, yeah, I'm just trying it out. And those of us who are recovering perfectionists, I think have a hard time with that because it's like we have a hard time letting ourselves make mistakes. And then we start categorizing everything that like doesn't work perfectly towards your end goal as a mistake. And it is not that hardcore. We learn so much from side quests and little experiments and little things that we let ourselves do and things didn't work out the way that we thought they would, but we can still learn so much. So I want to encourage us to stop overthinking and when you want to try something, take the action because that is going to give you so much feedback and so much information. And then you can choose, am I going to keep going along this path or am I going to pivot a little bit, or am I gonna try something else? Right? But you don't have that feedback until you take the action. So take the action as early as possible. Whatever little baby step version of your current goal, take that action and see how that works out for you. Do you like it? Do you want to continue on this path? Do you want to try something else? One of the things that like really struck me, because I used to just be so stuck in like analysis paralysis and just overwhelmed by all the options and so worried about making the wrong decision that I wasn't making any decisions for the longest time. And then it was like you kind of wait for the decision to be made for you or for you to run out of options. And then it's like, okay, well, I guess that's what I'm going to do because there's nothing else. There are no other options because I was frozen not doing anything. And now this is the only path that's left available to me. And that's not like super empowering or like designing your life, right? So, one of the things that was really empowering for me is the idea that like you can't steer a car that's parked. So you can't make a wrong turn, but you also can't make a right turn, and you can't get the feedback that you need to know if you're on the wrong path or not. When you're walking in a new city, right? And then you like pull up your map and it takes maybe I'm the only one that's like incompetent when it comes to compasses, but like you don't necessarily if you're at an intersection, it takes a minute to be like, where even am I? And sometimes you have to start walking to see like which direction you're going, which direction the map is taking you, and then you can correct. I really hope this is like such an embarrassing example because if I'm the only one who does this, I'm so sorry. But sometimes you have to start walking in a direction to see, like, oh, am I going the right way or am I going in the opposite direction? Do I need to turn around? But otherwise, you can just sit there spinning around in circles trying to figure out where to start going. And it's like head south on blah blah blah, and you're like, I don't know where south and north is right now. I'm in a completely new city. And so you start walking to see, am I going in the direction of the arrow or am I going in the opposite direction? And then you take a few steps and all of a sudden and it's so much more clear and you can start going the right way. And all it took was for you to take a couple steps, even if it's in the wrong direction. You're still saving so much more time than if you just sit there spinning around trying to figure out which direction is north when you have no information. Which, not no information. Don't judge me for really good at maps, okay? But that analogy applies to so much of life. Sometimes it's like you can think and think and think and imagine and consider and wonder whether or not this would work out, or if you would like it, or if it's a good fit, or if it aligns with your purpose, or if it makes you feel alive. And like you wonder and wonder and wonder, and you're thinking about it and you're considering and you're going through all these. If you just try it, you're gonna get that feedback so quickly. So quickly, right? And once you start getting in touch with like your your feelings ultimately of like how okay, so for example, if you want to start a podcast, right, and then you jump on the mic and you start recording and you start talking, when you've had some practice listening to yourself, that is going to give you so much feedback on if you're uncomfortable, even if you're uncomfortable, right? So first of all, if you're comfortable and you love it, amazing, boom. There's all the encouragement, all the validation you needed, right? You want to start a podcast, you jump on, you love it, boom, too easy. If you're uncomfortable, if you have a little bit of experience like listening to yourself, right, then it's pretty easy to figure out, am I uncomfortable because I just hate this and it's not for me? Or am I uncomfortable because this is new? And yeah, recording yourself talking to yourself in an empty room is kind of weird. But it's something like you can get over and you want to work through that challenge because you want to continue on to the ultimate goal. But the feedback is so much more immediate, especially compared to kind of spinning through your thoughts and trying to think through every conceivable scenario before taking any action. Okay. So you can always take a baby step and then pivot or decide that that's not for you and try something else. You can't steer a car that's parked. So start walking, start driving, start taking action so that you can get the feedback and figure out, is this something I like? Does this work? Like you don't know what you don't know. And so it can be so empowering to allow yourself to experiment and try things without all the like weight and pressure and obligation of telling yourself that like this is what you're going to do for the next X amount of years, regardless of whether or not you like it. Like, no, 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 no. None of that. None of that. You're not locked into anything. There's no contract. Just try something. Just experiment. Whatever that is that you want to do, give it a shot. If you want to write a book, have you written? Try writing a short story. Try writing the first chapter. Try writing something and see how it goes. But if you're going to sit here and not write a word until you figure out every single detail of this book and what your career as an author is going to look like and what the rest of your life is going to look like as an author and where you're going to live so that you can like have the best scenery to write your books and the whole time you've never written a word. Like just, okay. You don't have to figure all that out yet, but what you should probably figure out is if whether or not you hate writing. So let's take some action. Let's start there. Let's write some things down or join a writing class or, take a course or read a book on writing. Like take some action to see. And that is going to give you so much clarity and so much feedback for the next step. And also, like, I truly believe like the steps become visible as you go. So often, and Shauna with Ignited Decisions uses this analogy, and I love it. She's like, it's like when you're in fog, right? Like you can only see so far. And so if you're staying where you are, you can only see, whatever it is, 10 feet ahead of you. But when you take a step, then you can see the next 10 feet. And then when you take the next step, you can see even further. So it's not that you have to figure out how to see further into the future, it's that you have to move forward so that you can see further into the future. You don't have to know every step along the way until the end of the path. You don't have to have everything figured out. You just have to take that first step, and then you're going to have more clarity on where to go from there and what the next step might be after that. So action is so important. So important. And my final point I want to make here is how life is about becoming. I think so often like we have this idea that we we aren't the person that we want to be, so we can't start along that journey. So the author example, um, you're like, you are not a world-renowned author. So maybe you're not someone who like would be comfortable doing book tours, and maybe you're not someone who's written 8 books, right? But that doesn't mean that you can't be an author and that you can't start down that journey. Nobody starts the journey as the end person. You become that person along the way. You don't start out as a New York Times bestselling author. You have to write books first. And then as you're writing and selling these books, and whatever that process is, however many it takes to get to the bestseller, right? Because it's usually not the first one either, and that's a whole separate lesson, right? We usually have to work at our craft and work at doing something and get better at it and practice and put something out and get feedback. It's a process, which I know I hate processes, but it's how life works. Okay. So it's a process and you become better during that process. So as you're writing these not New York Times bestsellers, as you're writing these flops or whatever, you're becoming a better author. And then you write that bestseller and now you're a New York Times bestselling author. You didn't have to start out that way. You become that person along the journey, right? So it's like if you want to be a speaker, maybe you're not going to sell out stadiums at your first speaking gig. Maybe you're going to start in a room with like 5 people who are mildly interested in the topic that you're talking about. And then you're going to grow from there. So this is a good thing, right? Because you don't have to have all the qualities and skills of the ultimate version of yourself. You just have to start. And you literally become that person as you're going through the journey, as you're doing the work, as you're taking those steps, you're becoming that person. You're learning how to navigate more and more situations. You're building your capacity for dealing with whatever it is that your dream involves, right? So, for example, I just spent a month in Mexico, right? And I did a solo trip and I jumped around to a couple different cities there. I've never done anything like that before. And so it was really cool to be able to do that. And then when I thought about all the things that went into that, I literally started with road trips to cities I'd already been to. And actually, if you want to break it down even further, I started with going to the movies by myself and doing things by myself, right? And like being comfortable being by myself. And then you take those little road trips and you're like, okay, so you learn some things. You learn some things about yourself. You learn some things about planning ahead and navigating and figuring out new situations and trusting yourself and being safe and all these things, right? And then I did something a little bit bigger, right? I went to Belize by myself last year and I went to one location and I stayed there and then I went back home. And that was great. It was a great solo trip. It was for 3 weeks, so that again was kind of an extended time. They speak English there though, right? So like it was another little baby step. And then Mexico, my Spanish is trash. Fortunately, a lot of people speak English where I went. But so then that was like another little baby step. But it's like I was not ready at, I don't know, 19 when I was road tripping by myself to go to another country and navigate a different country in a different language. I was not ready for that. And that's okay. I didn't have to be. I was on the baby step of taking road trips by myself, right? And even last year, maybe I could have done Mexico last year, but I didn't, and that's okay. You build up to things and you grow and develop these skills as you're taking the action. So take the pressure off of like, you don't have to be that person right now. You just have to be the person who takes the next step. And then you become the next version of yourself as you're taking action and as you're growing and learning. And I think so often, like, it's easy to think of that as a failure of like, oh, you haven't learned this yet. And you look back at past versions of yourself and you're like, oh my gosh, I was such an idiot. Or like, whatever, whatever. If only I would have known. But you're not supposed to. Like we literally start out as babies who know nothing. Life is all about learning and growing and evolving. And if we're fortunate, we're going to be doing that our whole lives. You never arrive. There is not a point in life to where you arrive and you're like done. You're done growing. You're done learning. Like you never get to a point where you've achieved everything and you don't like need to keep participating in life anymore. Like living is growing, learning, evolving, all these things. Like you never get to a point where you just know everything and you've experienced all the things and like you're your ultimate version of yourself. There's no arrival point, right? Like death is the is the arrival point, right? Which is like kind of the opposite of living. So my point is like I think there's it's easy to get like caught up in feeling like the process is such a drag and that it's like keeping you from the goal, but it's really it is the goal. Our whole lives are all about this experiential, like we're participating in life. And the earlier we can start that, then the earlier we start living, honestly. So when you're thinking about like trying to get to a place and maybe the challengers are frustrating or maybe the process is frustrating, realizing like the process is life, like the journey is the thing. You don't have to try to hurry up and rush through learning everything so that you can get to this end point because there's not an end point. And I know I hate saying this because like it really I was kind of like annoyed when I found this out because I hate a process. Like I just want the process to be done and I just want to be at the thing, right? So we're talking about traveling, right? I don't love traveling. Like I don't love lugging a suitcase around an airport with people bumping into me. Like I don't, I don't like being smashed in a tiny tube hurtling through space with recycled air for hours and getting leg cramps. Like I don't love the process. I love being in another place by a beach. Love that. So that kind of translates to a lot of the rest of my life, right? Is I don't necessarily love the process. I love an end result. And I think a lot of us are like that. So this was such a powerful mindset shift for me, and that's why I'm like harping on it so much, is like actually the process is the thing. The journey is the thing. Like that is life. The process of experiencing and taking action and growing and learning, evolving, becoming the next version of yourself, and then becoming the next version, and then the next version. Like we never arrive. And so I hope that gives you so much like freedom and permission to be willing to iterate and to be willing to experiment and to be willing to try because the ultimate goal is not this perfect person who never has to try. You're going to continue trying and learning and seeing how things work out for your whole life. So go ahead and start now. Like it's not a sign of failure to experiment. It's a sign of being alive. So I want to wrap up by saying, by encouraging you that you don't have to have everything figured out before you start. The process is the whole point. You're going to be figuring things out for your whole life. And so it's not a sign of failure or lack of intelligence to be figuring things out. Like we're always doing that. You're going to always be doing it. So the earlier you start, actually, the earlier you start participating in life. Okay. And you can always pivot. So take that action, take a baby step. If you need to pivot, you can. Or it'll also help you get kind of further down the journey where you get more clarity and you can even pinpoint like where down this path you want to go. You can't steer a car that's parked, so start driving and then you'll get feedback from there. And if you need to correct, you can. That's what life is all about. Life is all about becoming. It's not about arriving, there's not a final destination. It's the journey of becoming, and you're becoming that next version of yourself as you're growing, as you're going through this journey. You don't have to start out as your final iteration. You start out as you now, and the journey is how you grow and evolve and mature and become the person who can handle what your version of success looks like. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you so much. I have some coaching spots open. So if that is something that you're interested in, I would love to hear from you. You can just email me at the F.I.E.R.C.E Framework, or excuse me, at confidence@thefierceframework.net. You can DM me at the F.I.E.R.C.E Framework. And yeah, I can't wait to see where this journey takes you. And I just want to encourage you to start that journey. Go do the thing. You're already doing so great. And I will see you so soon. Until then, keep becoming fierce.